we are going to be looking at effective leadership and governance over information security management systems. But I'm already going to tell you, we're actually going to focus a lot more on something I really love, and that's really interesting right now: artificial intelligence management systems. So we're going to be looking at the risks and how to manage those risks of artificial intelligence, how you can do it as anyone in an organization who's interested in artificial intelligence or might even have a role in those, especially if you might be thinking one day of being in a governance or leadership position. We're going to look at different AI management frameworks. Little bit of an introduction to myself, though I have to be grateful for JSDC's awesome introduction already. So indeed, I have written a number of books and certifications, for example, for the Open Compliance and Ethics Groups, OCEG or OSEG, as well as other online things. So my latest one is Integrated Artificial Intelligence Framework. Go check that out at oceg.org. You can get a lot more information on passing that whole certification, which is a very large endeavor, but will give you all the fundamentals you need to know about managing AI risks. I've been a consultant in internal audit, led global teams in risk management, in internal control, in governance, risk compliance, and in information security. And of course, my big new specialty is in artificial intelligence, as, for instance, lead auditor as well as lead implementer for ISO 42001, our AI management standard. I've recently launched a podcast called The Control Problem, hosted by the AI Risk Institute. So if you're interested in AI, go check out the AI Control Problem podcast and the AI Risk Institute itself. Now is where we're going to look directly at AI governance and dive into the topic. Artificial intelligence governance are the different structures and controls we are going to put in place in our organization to make sure that these risks from AI are properly managed. And you might think, oh, wait, I don't think we have very many risks of AI in our organization. We don't really have any big programs, a little chatbot there. And that's where I'm going to tell you, at least if you're in a leadership or governance position or anyone looking at these risks, you are probably wrong, because your employees are already using ChatGPT, putting confidential information and sending it off to different people. The graphics design function is using it to create AI-generated images. Your HR function is maybe already using it, whether you know about it or not, to screen candidate CVs. You want to make sure that all of those risks are under control. And that's why we start with some fundamental AI governance principles to mitigate those different risks, or at least see how we can respond to them. I'm going to start by showing the ethical principles. And the first is accountability. Now, I want you to actually think that the risks of AI are serious. You might think, oh no, what's the problem if an image is badly generated? Let me tell you what the problem is. If you are selecting the wrong candidate because your HR simply fed them through a badly configured system, AI system, to review the candidatures, whether they tell you about it or not, if your employees are using ChatGPT and sending that off to clients or, God forbid, the board of directors, you definitely have some risks from AI. There are organizations that use this. Government uses it for policing efforts now. We have organizations using it for research. All of these applications, if they do not have proper human oversight, then you are going to have problems. Problems not with the AI, you're going to have problems with the humans affected by these things, because the risks can cover either people in the organization, they can be affected by AI, they can affect your clients, it can affect groups of people outside of the organization, it can even affect society. Okay, your CV selection system doesn't seem to like people from certain area codes. I'm sorry, that's a little form of discrimination. that you need to be aware of if you want to avoid lawsuits, all of those kind of problems. First thing you want to do is make sure that all the different risks from AI are covered by someone in your organization. Someone is accountable for them. This is often not the case nowadays because this is an emerging risk where all of the different facets of this risk have not really revealed themselves. There is a greater uncertainty, in other words. But this is precisely where you should be trying to understand the particular risks and making sure that someone is assigned to these particular risks, not all of them, to the particular domain of risk that we can see. Another principle is fairness. Now, you might think, okay, this is a nice little thing to put in the code of conduct. Let's make sure that it's fair. Except if it's not fair, the regulator can go after you. Your clients can go after you. Your suppliers might not want to work with you. If you are affecting society or groups of people at large, yes, you could definitely have issues down the line. So this is not simply willy-nilly, nice little principle of fairness. This is something that every organization that wants to avoid significant risks in present and in future should be putting in place now. Another one is transparency. I am just going to say that this is a really fundamental principle, and it also is tied to the idea of explainability. We used to refer to AI as a black box. In fact, some people still do. And yet I'm going to say the tools that are coming out nowadays on explainability, so explainability tools or transparency tools, are really changing our idea of the AI inputs. It used to be just information seems to come out of this black box. We don't know what it really came from. That's no longer an excuse. An organization must make sure that is having the right information. Let me take an easy example. So you're an organization, you put in a chat bot because you don't feel like hiring a few people to do something that an AI can do. Now, I disagree with that, but let's get to this. So your AI chat bot was fed on information that you didn't verify. Now, suddenly, your regulator contacted you telling you that someone was in communication with your organization and they received these discriminatory comments, or they were actually promised a certain great deal. You're surprised that there's first this legally binding communication that's no longer followed up after that. All of those things come from a lack of transparency in the inputs. Then there's the processing itself. We want to make sure that we have an explainability of our processes and our process itself. Nowadays, you can have AIs that can better tell you how they actually arrived at a decision. Now, my AI control problem.com podcast also talks about how that's actually not always reliable as well, but it at least gets us closer to transparency. And on outputs as well, there's a way of tracing the reason for certain decisions or certain statements made by AI. One of them is giving appropriate sources. Then we have our technical principles. I'm going to start by our first one of security and resilience. Why security? Now, it's not a new thing that we want to protect our informational assets. It's not a new thing that organizations have data that's worth sometimes more than their buildings. However, it is a new thing that we have these data models that are an additional source of vulnerability. For instance, you can query a system, and sometimes people have gotten access to the source data from that. So you can have new kinds of risk from AI. Go check out things like data poisoning, which is when you're putting improper information for an AI to treat. You put it in the information that an AI is going to use, and then it's going to spit out improper information on the other side. And they say model inversion attacks, where people are trying to get to the underlying infrastructure of your AI models through different kinds of querying. You have new kinds of risks for security also check for the resilience of your different systems. Explainability, I tied that to transparency, but I put it within the technical principles as well. I told you it was fundamental because we have explainability tools, whereas transparency is more of the ethical principle. In explainability, we have tools that can help us to explain our inputs, our process, our outputs. Our data governance. Let me say this once, let me say this twice. The most important thing in setting up any AI system nowadays is your data itself. I naively, creating my previous AI certification, put a lot of different principles. And then an AI expert told me, you just need to focus on one of these things, okay? It's the data. It's the data. And the data governance. You have no idea how important this is. You need to make sure that the source of your information is appropriate, that it's going to be free from copyright, that it's going to be free from different legal copyright issues. You have to make sure that your data is properly prepared, that it's properly treated, that it's provenance. A lot of different things about how data itself is collected, how it's managed, and how it's used within the processes themselves. And then we have operating principles. I'm going to put human oversight because as much as people say, okay, AI is going to take over our jobs, I'm going to say, yes, AI is just going to take over many jobs, but I am trying to teach the new jobs that are popping up because of AI. There's actually a lot of new jobs that have popped up due to AI. Things like AI ethicist, things like someone overseeing AI compliance, making sure that AI systems are explainable, making sure that they're fair, accountable, all of these other principles. These will be humans making sure that this is in place. Now, of course, they're probably also going to have AIs making sure that this is in place, but you need to have a final human, which is accountable, back to our ethical principles of accountability. And finally, compliance and legal alignment. We are no longer at the days where it is simply the EU AI Act. We actually have laws and regulations on AI over many different countries and many geographic regions right now. And so do check out the local laws on AI that you currently have. Now, let's look at the AI governance framework. And this is basically going to be an org chart where I am going to be placing different AI roles. I'm going to place the AI manager. The AI manager is the one who is basically going to be leading the AI project. He reports to someone. We're going to see who that is later. And he's going to be head of generally AI operations. He's not head of everything, however. We have on our other side our business operations. Let me call that the non-AI part, but it's basically whatever your organization does, okay? It sells ice cream, it's going to be your ice cream selling and manufacturing processes, whatever. But you are going to have someone who's going to be doing the connection between your AI operations and your business operations. That could be the AI manager. However, in a larger organization where this is a big thing, this is going to be your AI operations manager. I like to call this person the translator because they translate business operational needs onto our AI operations. And this is not new. We already have this for information technology. I've already given my specifications to someone in my organization saying, okay, I need a custom-based audit module created in certain ways. It needs to do the follow-up on so and so. And I was talking to someone who was basically IT operations manager, translating my business needs into something the IT department would be able to at least customize or build in-house. Same thing for AI. This is not a new role. It might even be the same person, but it's an important one on making sure that we can have a proper strategic alignment between our business operations and our AI operations. Our AI manager should report to, it could be management. I want to place something better, which is our AI steering committee, which could report to a board of directors. More likely, it's going to report to management. I'm going to say that this is probably a management committee. So you're going to have, say, chief technology officer seated on the AI steering committee. If you don't have a committee, it might simply be your chief technology officer. Then you are going to have your second line of accountability function. These do not report to our management committee, which is our AI steering committee. They report to an AI, I'm going to give a few names here. You could say an AI compliance and ethics committee, an AI risk and compliance committee, an AI ethics committee. You could call it maybe audit committee or the quality committee. I don't care how you call it. The difference is that this committee is the one that's going to, in best practice, report to a board of directors. Okay, who are on the board again? There are shareholders, maybe some executive directors, but generally they're supposed to be more independent. We might have some independent directors, maybe from our group entity, maybe from even another organization. So our AI ethics committee reports to our board of directors. These functions verify everything that's to the right here. Our AI steering committee, our AI manager, our AI operations, our AI operation manager, and everything basically related to AI. The AI compliance officer is going to verify compliance of AI on all of the rest. Risk management is going to verify AI risks, information security, and data protection. So maybe our chief information security officer covering AI and our data protection officer, DPO, covering AI will, of course, look at those particular areas of risk for our particular organization's AI operations. And quality assurance is a big one because I'm not saying the word data quality assurance, but I could, because data quality assurance could be looking at the quality of the data, including its provenance, including copyright law, including all of those things that we should be having in advance to make sure that the quality of our data is appropriate. These can be dedicated AI roles. I think in the beginning, and for most organizations, it's simply going to be, say, the compliance officer also covering this. Same thing for risk, infosec, data protection, and so on. I place below some annex functions that are useful. Documentation will help document AI policies and procedures and guidelines and so on. This might be done by someone else, but you can have a dedicated function. Training and development is going to give AI training and development. Could be someone else giving it, but it could be a dedicated department. Or same thing with communication or public relation. It could be a specific AI department, could be the communications or public relations department of your particular organization. Let me put a few roles here. We have below our AI manager, our AI operations. I have placed a few key roles here. Our AI data science manager is the one who is going to be looking at all the data, how it's transformed by algorithms, and how it produces an output. Our AI research and development for custom tools or for pure creations is going to be creating all of these models of AI, configuring algorithms and honestly things beyond my domain to make sure that we can do the proper research on those and produce something for the market. And you might also have an AI user experience manager, how games or applications now are supposed to be so intuitive. You're not supposed to have a user manual, or at least, you shouldn't need to have a user manual because they're supposed to be so intuitive. That's thanks to the great effort from our user experience managers over the past decade. AI is something new, so you might have either a dedicated or a combined role with an AI user experience manager who will configure the experience for our user to be as easy and intuitive as possible. I place our AI operations manager, our universal translator of business needs between business operations and our AI operations and our AI steering committee and the different roles such as AI compliance and ethics manager. Notice I've put two roles here, compliance and ethics. I'm going to tell you that it might actually be worth having a dedicated ethics manager separated from compliance, simply because compliance officers, they think compliance, and then ethics is a secondary consideration. But for AI, ethics is the first consideration. Ethics is the first consideration. It is very different. You cannot simply take an untrained compliance officer, in my belief, and put them to ethics and believe that person will know everything that they need to do in that function without a good deal of training, learning, and development. So please follow the courses at the AI Risk Institute. Then you have our AI risk manager, dedicated role or not, but he looks at AI risks, which are very different from other risks in the organization. Our CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, or Data Protection Officer for information security and data protection. I'm going to say this is especially useful. So I talked about information security, right? Let me also say that it is really important for data protection because people keep on putting their private information onto these models. The models recycle this personal information, and then it is spit out as an output to other users. And if they're not putting their own information, then it can even be critical. In other words, it's a data leak of private, confidential information. And if you're having that kind of problem, you're having major problems. Go check General Data Protection Regulation and the humongous fines that you can have if you really have breaches to client data or employee data. AI Quality Assurance Manager. So again, I'm going to say data is the big part of the quality assurance, but this quality assurance manager can look at the entirety as well. All of these functions reporting to our AI compliance and ethics manager. I want to look at AI data in a system development lifecycle. Now, let me just tell you that this is a model developed traditionally and is probably not the one that most organizations developing AI solutions are using. They might be using something like Agile, which has a more iterative approach that has a lot of dialogue with the client, constant review of information and of risk. But I want to show you this diagram so that I can tell you where our AI system is different in this traditional system development lifecycle. Okay, so traditionally we'd have our system planning, except now the big part of planning is not going to be the technical model or whatever. It's going to be the data. It's going to be the data is the most important at this point. This is different from any other IT system. It's the data that you need to plan at the beginning here. We're going to do an AI systems analysis. We could either have an AI system design if we're doing this in-house. The difference here is we're going to be creating things like model design, actually creating the model itself. Sometimes we're just going to take something relatively off the shelf, and there we're rather going to do a selection. If we're doing it ourselves, we're going to have our development. And the big part of development is, it's not coding. I mean, it is coding, but it's not the big part. It's data collection and preparation, because, let me repeat this mantra here, it's the data that is important in an AI management system. In AI system selection, we can have customization, configuration. We're going to test everything. But testing is not the same thing with an IT software. It's really different when you are training, model training, and evaluation. It is very different. And then finally, you're going to find a plan for implementation, convert what you have before then. And of course, you're going to have a system for reviewing everything all together, monitoring your entire system. But I'm going to say that the big difference with AI is that you can have risk events from AI. You can have technical glitches in an IT software, but generally an IT software is not going to be affecting society. It's not going to be posing risks to individuals and groups. It's not going to be making someone not go to university when a properly configured system would have allowed them to go to university, at least a certain university. So we do not have the same kind of risks here. And that's why recording of events is a really big thing. It feeds back into the loop. I am putting at the bottom the ethical governance and oversight, really important in this entire framework. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to be looking at metrics and KPIs for AI governance. And we have a few categories here. I'm not going to insist on every single one of these metrics, but rather I'd like to show you the categories. So we want to verify the performance on an ongoing basis of our system. So we have some metrics for this. We could be looking at compliance and risk metrics, such as percentage of AI systems with completed risk assessments. Just going to give one example. We could have metrics over data and model quality. So how are you going to monitor this? You could check, for instance, through number of model drift incidents per quarter. I've singled this one out because model drift is when initially your AI model was getting a certain kind of output, but AI systems get continuous information, at least some of them do, from their user interactions. And when they do, their outputs might change over time. This is called model drift. And their outputs in the end, before they might have been fine, but in the end, they might have become racist or something. So you would try to monitor this. And one of the ways to verify incidents reported or other ways of quantifying model drift. We look at accountability and oversight. You could use something like frequency of AI governance reviews for this as a certain key performance indicator. In transparency and ethics, we can look at something like percentage of AI systems with transparency documentation. Or finally, in performance and improvement, we can look at something like a KPI like number of model retraining cycles per year. All of these metrics, whatever they are, these are just examples, whatever they are, they're supposed to help the organization monitor the different parts of your organization. So I would like now to focus on the different ethical principles of AI. The ethical principles of AI are fundamental. We looked at fairness before. We want to make sure that our system will be free from risks of discrimination or bias against people. If someone does not get a loan because the system said we don't trust this person, let's say, to give them a loan, but it seemed to have been based on something that shouldn't be used, such as country of the person, unless that's country risk, that's something else. But it should not be a sort of discrimination against someone's country. It should be based on something else. Transparency. So we cover this, the explainability of AI decisions, that we have people that are accountable. The responsibility must be determined. It can be with the creators or the users, but this needs to be properly determined. In fact, this is a big part here for our legal experts out there. They need to, for any software given out, which has AI capabilities, say where it's going to be the software manufacturer's duty or where it's going to be the user's duty. And I'm just going to tell you, of course, every AI software manufacturer is going to say it's all the user, but we're going to have court decisions coming up very soon, which are going to say, no, that's not always the case. It hasn't really come up yet. This is my prediction of the future. Reliability and safety. AI must be safe and reliable. We talked about information security and data protection, privacy and security of our data. Make sure that you have systems in place that if you are using AI in your organization, that it is not giving out confidential information, that is following the ethical values that we saw at the beginning, that there is human control right at the top. And this is where I'm talking about the new jobs that we're going to have in the future, or quite frankly, that I am training at the AI Risk Institute right now, and trustworthiness. We need to have systems that are going to give trust. The early systems, we didn't trust AI, Gemini, ChatGPT, all of those systems, especially at the beginning, because so many people saw false sources, hallucinations, and all of those things. Let me just tell you, that is getting less of a case. It's getting more trustworthy, but these are the big models. Anything that is applied to your particular organization is going to have to get tested for trustworthiness, but trustworthiness is something that's going to increase over time when people perceive it as fair. Accountability, as we said, and there's this idea of shared benefit where our tools help the entirety of society. I'm going to look at ISO 42000 AI management systems. I need to define what a management system itself is. We have all of these standards from ISO 9001 quality, 27001 information security. We have them on a lot of different things. I'm going to be focusing on the one on artificial intelligence management system, which is ISO 42001. So the management system are going to be all the kind of structures. So let's think about reporting structures, committees, people's roles assigned, okay, structures, people, as in people doing different things, tools that might be reporting tools, that might even be software tool, resources, so resources that are given, not just financial, but also tooling resources, data resources, etc., and processes that means things that are performed on generally a regular basis so that we can achieve our objectives over artificial intelligence. Wow. Big definition, but it's how an organization works to achieve its goals. Every organization has one. With ISO 42001, we try to structure it. This is a relatively new standard, ISO 42001. I found it relatively generic compared to the older standard, ISO 27001, which is on information security management system. The difference is that the 42001, the AI one, came out in December 2023, whereas information security has been an issue for organizations for a long time. And so it is a lot more mature as a standard, the information security one, whereas we're still grasping at the kind of processes that we want for ISO 42001, and it will evolve with time. I have a model for this. What does a management system do? This is the risk funnel, and this is my little model. It takes the risks from the environment. So I don't mean external risks only. I mean anything that can make it more difficult for your area, your organization, to meet its objectives. Objectives being not hurting the general public, making money for our shareholders, giving quality to our clients, meeting deadlines, etc. Okay? You can have information security risks and AI risks from the external environment. This is going to be covered by ISO 27001, the one on information security. However, ISO 42001 is going to be facing on the second kind of risk, which is risks dependent on the AI activities of the organization. That is ISO 42001. So let me just repeat this, really important. ISO 42001 is not a replacement or cannot be covered because your organization already has 27001. I've already been asked this. Oh, can we just have ISO 27001 to cover our AI risks? No. No, because ISO 42001 covers the risks of your own AI operations. If someone is using deep fakes to attack you, that's still your old 27001 standard. If you are using a chatbot, a loan granting system, an application review system, those are your own risks that you should cover with a standard such as ISO 42001. And it takes those big risks, decreases them through a large number of controls that we're going to look at right now, and makes them much smaller residual risk. We're going to look at the whole cycle of using ISO 42001. We first plan, then we do, then we check, then we act. In the planning, we're going to plan to put in our AI management system. In the do, we put it in place. In the check, we check that it's working effectively. All of those little problems that weren't working correctly in the AI management system, we're going to act to improve them. Let's dive into these. At the top of the planning, we have the context of the organization. We're going to see where our organization is actually operating. We have our leadership parts for the organization. We're going to look at the planning for our AI management system. We're going to be looking at what kind of support the AI management system needs, the ongoing operations, our evaluation, our checking phase for the performance of our AI management system, and finally, the improvement to the entire system. Let me dive into this with the context of the organization, placing our internal and our external context. Our internal context are going to be the strengths and weaknesses that we have, this is important, for putting in place an AI management system, such as we already have people with dedicated roles over AI. We already have trained persons. However, we maybe lack some of the software tools to be effective as of day one. And so we're going to have to make sure that we cover those risks, cover those weaknesses before we get to them. On the external context, we're going to be looking at our opportunities and our threats. Let me think about our threats first. So it's threats to our AI management system. Let me just tell you, a really big threat is your organization not having a system for managing its AI operations. That's a huge threat because your competitors are your threat. You're going to be left in the dust if you do not have ways of properly managing AI risks. That is the threat. The opportunity is that by putting in place your AI management system, you can be ahead of the pack. You can be better than your competitor. You can utilize AI to your advantage to be excellent in your field. We're going to look at interested parties or stakeholders. In any case, it is where you try to understand the interest of the different people outside or inside your organization: clients, suppliers, partners, board of directors, employees, regulator, etc. How much they care about this AI management system and how much power they might have over it. So regulator might generally not care, but they have a lot of power to shut you down if you do something wrong. Looking at our leadership part, I'm going to insist on this. Nothing is going to work unless you have proper leadership support. So I looked at an organization, a large publicly owned organization. They had an AI ethics manager, they had an AI project manager, they had a whole team of 10 or so people just on AI. The only thing they didn't have was leadership commitment because it was a public organization and the leaders were politicians. And it's really difficult to make a politician take a stand. And so, ironically, that was someplace where the organization would not have been able to be ISO 42001 certified without some serious changes in the tone at the top. Scope of the AI management system, you are going to determine several different scopes. So first of all, the scope of the entire AI systems used within the organization. Then you're going to have your scope of your management system. So the scope of your management system is where all of these controls that we're talking about, you have over that area. And then the third scope is that if you want to get ISO 42001 certified, you're going to certify it not necessarily over all of your management system, but let's say just over the countries of Switzerland and Germany and the US this year, and we'll do the other countries next year. Fine. So you've limited the scope of operation. In our leadership, they don't necessarily write, but they definitely give the tone for our AI policies. They're saying what we want in our organization for AI, what we do not want in our organization. They're saying what is important in our organization, what we should follow. It should be updated on a regular basis as well. And the internal organization, we saw that before. The different roles and responsibilities, remember? We need to make sure that our board of directors, our management, has established around the organization all the roles for AI, but also to verify that our AI operations have ethical oversight, have proper governance. And so our internal organization is really important. They need to be defined. A big part of our internal organization, you might find this surprising, is a reporting of concerns. Why is it within the internal organization because we're defining here reporting lines on incident. Think whistleblower, and that's when you're reporting incidents that are sufficiently bad that they go to, let's say, a regulator or at least to our compliance department. But there are tons of other incidents that need reporting and proper reporting lines. Let's say that it's a data breach. Let's say it's an information security issue. Let's say that's an operational incident. All of these need to have the right escalation lines to report on the particular issue that we have seen. We look at our planning of operations. Here I'm looking at our AI system impact assessment. What you need to do is perform a AI system impact assessment. ISO 27001 call it business risk impact assessment. However, I'm going to say that it's particularly useful for AI systems because they are looking at risks that are constantly evolving. Maybe the standard, ISO 42001 itself, hasn't really documented them perfectly yet, though do check Annex C, which goes and looks through AI risks. But these need to be properly documented as the different risks to the system, to individuals, groups, society, and to the organization itself. We're going to look at the impact on individuals and groups. We're going to look at societal impact. And we're going to have a management guidance for AI system development and maintenance, which is basically going to help make sure that we can properly cover all of those aspects. Now we're moving on to support. We want to make sure that we have the resources for our AI system. Our organization needs to have different resources, and they're not just financial resources, things like data resources. Yeah, because data resources, I said that an AI system's most important thing is its data. You need to have the proper data. You need to make sure where it comes from, etc. Also, things like tooling resources, your AI algorithms, your models, your different AI tools as well, your system and computing resources, such as hardware and data storage for AI. And let's not forget about the different roles and responsibilities, our human aspect within this entire thing. An important part is our information for our interested parties. We identified them earlier in our process, but now we need to make sure that we are giving them what they want to be informed about. Regulator usually doesn't care, but you have to keep them informed about, say, incidents. You have to keep them informed. A big part is system documentation and user information, because there is this concept of intended use. Intended use is a really important thing. You don't want your AI system to be used in an unintended way. And sometimes you can control your users, sometimes you can't. If your users are your own HR department, fine, you can generally control them in their job description. But you can't if it's the general public and anyone who downloads, say, Gemini. You'd want to make sure that you have reporting to all of our users and that you can give information to our interested party also on the intended use. This is both the shortest part of the ISO management standard and probably the biggest part of our daily use of AI. It's going to be our operations themselves. We are going to put a large number of controls and procedures, transforming an input to an output. And your controls are going to try to make sure that that whole process works well to get to whatever you wanted it to actually achieve as a process. You make sure that anything that could make it more difficult to arrive at that objective is seen as a risk and documented as a risk, understanding the impact that it can have. Looked at the data for AI systems, you look at the acquisition, the quality, the provenance, and the preparation of that data to make sure that your system is working exactly as intended and that is used in the appropriate way. When you are working with third parties, and I'm talking about suppliers and clients or even partners, your responsibilities, even for the AI system, are properly defined between all of these different parties. Okay, we've gone through the entire system. I now want to look at the check aspect, which is basically a review by ongoing monitoring of your operations, by internal audit, who are generally going to come on a more periodic basis, but report to an audit committee and board at a very high level in the organization, and your management review, either through approvals or it's supposed to be on a relatively periodic or at least pretty frequent basis. Anything that any of these three groups have noted are going to go in the act part of the entire thing and are going to lead to our continual improvement. If an ISO inspector finds a fault in these, any part of fault, they're going to put it as a non-compliance, and you would generally need to correct this non-compliance, either a major or a minor non-compliance, to be able to finally get certified ISO 42001. We looked at the governance over the entire AI management system, and we looked at a lot of different things that honestly concern so many different roles.